All right, welcome everyone to today's webinar. And just so you guys know, this is my first time using this software, this Webinar Jam. So if there's any sort of glitches or anything, too bad, I'm new. I do a lot of training, a lot of webinars for clients. So this is my first time doing a public one. So I'm really excited, and it's kind of cool. I always talk about, get out of your comfort zone. So this is something new for me. So I'm excited to be able to share some cool information with you guys today. And while we're getting started, some people are just joining. I do want you to put in the chat box there if you can. Introduce yourself, say hi, any questions that you have. But I'm going to get started in about 30 seconds here. I put a survey out while you guys were registering for it, and I got a lot of really cool questions. So today, as we go through some of the questions that came up, we're going to go through, which is handling objections, looking at how to build a step-by-step process, how to do follow-up, overcoming sales fear, selling value over price, and, really creating solid first impressions. So today, I really want to make sure that you guys get some of those questions answered. So if you do have any questions that you want to throw at me, throw it in the chat room, and we can have some fun with this. But I do want to get started. Respect everybody's time. We're probably going to be about 45 minutes or so. We're going to go through some good information, and by the end of this, you should be able to have some cool takeaways that you can use right away. So today, this is really what I'm going to be covering, is where we usually go wrong. There's some things that are very common with people in today's marketplace, in selling, that they make mistakes, and there's ways that we can fix this really quickly. We're also going to talk about some of the psychology and the predictable ways that people buy, understanding some of the sales history, the neuroscience, how people make decisions, why we're the worst predictors of our own future behavior. I'm also going to get into the power of storytelling. I'm going to get into how storytelling actually moves your buyers to a more logical conclusion and a decision. And then we're going to talk how to build repeatable best practices. The key to all of this is that everybody's busy, right? Nobody needs more things to do. Nobody needs more stuff to do. So hopefully today, I'm not going to so much give you a bunch more things that you got to do, but give you a different way to think about your business, how to be able to do less, have more. And on this call, I do have some of my clients here. I've got some of my friends on here, and I've got a whole bunch of people that I've never met before. And the key to this information is repetition, is that even if you've heard it once before, are you really applying it? So take this stuff away and apply it right away. And the problem that people have today is they don't have time. Everywhere I go, it doesn't matter what organization, what business, what role people fill, is people are busy. It's taking a lot of effort to do a lot more stuff. It's really complex out there. We're dealing with change. A lot of really, there's a lot of tools that we can use, a lot of complications, right? And I think a lot of times it's just too much information, right? So we're going to go through that. We're going to talk about being able to battle through all of this stuff today. I'll give you an example. Has anybody ever moved before? Of course you have, right? What happens when you move? Well, you take all your crap, you put it in boxes, and you move that crap from one place to another. And what ends up happening is you start to unpack those boxes, and there's sometimes those boxes that you don't even unpack. And we moved about a year or so ago, and what I found is when we moved into our new condo, I opened up some boxes and I found that we had 3 hammers. And I asked myself, what do we need 3 hammers for? And the challenge is that just like when we're moving, just like in our lives, it's the same thing that happens in our business and in our sales process. And we keep adding more and more things, and we're not sure why we have all this stuff. And just like in our homes, if we have too much going on, it becomes claustrophobic. So what I want to help you do today on this call is think about, if you were moving into a brand new sort of sales condo, what's the stuff that you want to bring in? And what's the crap that you don't want to bring with you? And that's really the message today. I love this quote, and I love this guy, this picture, but I used to have this quote. I wrote it down for myself when I was selling full time, is I would call people and everybody would always say, oh, they're just not interested in what I have. The challenge is not that they're not interested. It's that I'm just not interesting. So my goal is to get interesting. And that's what we're going to talk about today. If you're having a challenge connecting with customers, you have to do a gut check and say, am I being interesting? Am I somebody that people actually want to talk to? Now, hopefully you guys, this isn't me. This is what a lot of people think they're getting into when they find me. This is joegirard.com. And he was world's greatest salesman. That's not me. I'm pretty good, but that's not me. And so I get actually a lot of really cool SEO juice because he's a sales guy. I'm a sales guy. And people find me because I'm a little bit different. But he's an old school Guinness Book of World Records, car salesman, really cool stuff. I've got his books. I've talked to him. Interesting guy. But this is me. I love to golf and I love freedom, which is what I want my business to be able to do for me and what I want your business to be able to do for you. So I travel around, I do speaking, I work with people, I work with teams. I've done lots of different things in sales, winning awards. But what's really important to me is family, is my girlfriend. I just talked to her on the phone about 10 minutes ago and she got the lead in a new play. She's a ballerina and she's really super, super cool woman. I'm so impressed by her. And also we've got an awesome little dog, Roxy. And she's even talking about putting Roxy up on Instagram as one of those dogs. So this is what is really important to me. So I want to ask you guys, what's important to you? Is it growing your business? Is it just being busy? Sometimes I hear people taking that as a source of pride, that I'm just busy. So here's an idea. For me, these are all the books and all the inspiration, all the resources that I've been looking at over the last few years. And what I'm showing you this for is that I'm going through all of these tools so that you don't have to, right? I'm taking this stuff and I'm distilling it down so that you have the opportunity to take the best ideas of this and put them into process for yourself. So I look at things like the neuroscience books. I look at all the different sales books. I look at some of the things about meditation and leadership and the winner's brain and the web of life, all these really, really cool books. Here's an idea though. One of the books, Maxwell Maltz talks about ideas are changed not by will, but by other ideas. So I want you to think about that for a second. Just because you want something to change in your business doesn't mean, oh, looks like the presentation timed out. Okay, one sec. Oh, and we're back. Okay, looks like we're back. So here's the thing. Ideas are changed not by will, but by other ideas. And this is a guy, Maxwell Maltz. He's the guy that came up with the idea of it takes 21 days to build a habit. So welcome back. Sorry about the delay there. That's why new technology, please forgive me. But what I'm saying is that it's not that you just want things to change. You have to actually put new ideas in place to make those things change. So when I work with people, I always look at tested processes. What are the things that you can do repeatedly that you can improve upon? Are you testing your voicemails? Are you testing your language? Are you testing your strategies and finding the things that work? Or do you continue to repeat the same things over and over? And an easy one as a test, so I would write this down if I were you. If you're trying a new conversation or a new language, when you say it to people and they look interested, keep saying stuff like that. If they don't look interested, it probably sucks. That's an easy test. I see so many people, they try and work on perfecting this pitch, and then they get in front of people and they just keep saying the same thing and people are looking disinterested, looking past them. So test your language, test your conversation. The next one, this is where I become a big nerd, is the behavioral psychology. Like I said, people are the worst predictors of their own future behavior. And I read all these books to find out, why am I so crazy? Why do I make decisions in certain ways? And how can I learn from the things and the studies and the research that's out there? And then the last one is your own personal mindset. Are you creating this mindset where you're adding a crazy amount of value to your customers and the people around you? And are you working on your mindset daily? Because this is the stuff that will knock you off the fence. So if you look at those three, I talk to people about what you need to do, why you need to do it, and then why we don't do it. Because we all know the stuff we should be doing, but sometimes it's hard. So mindset's really, really important. So when you're dealing with challenges, and this is what I always look at, is if you have a challenge, there's three ways you can address it. You can either fix. So now you can be reactionary. So something happens, we go, whose fault is it? What do we do? Let's fix it. The next one is we can find the cause. So we can say, oh, what happened there? Who do we need to go talk to? What was the issue? And we go and look and try and find that source. But the big one that you want to look at is how do we prevent these things from happening in the future? When we talk about those moving boxes, how do we stop overcrowding our minds, overcrowding our business? And that's what we're going to go through. This picture is always a really good symbol for me. When I listen to sales calls and when I listen to people talking, I always think about this visual of double dutch, that skipping rope game, where that one person is just waiting for their turn to jump in. That's what I hear most often on sales calls when people are talking to customers. They're just waiting for their turn to say the stuff. And their customers are going, and you're pushing them away and you're not sure why, because you think your knowledge and your information is really valuable. But the trick is, it's not about what you say, but it's about how you interact and connect with people, which is what we're going to talk about. So know this, there's 5 buying decisions that people go through, and they go through these in a very predictable way. The first buying decision that people make is they buy from you. They decide whether you're the person that they know, like, and trust, and that they are wanting to do business. When people ask about how do you sell value over price, it's by being valuable yourself. And to be valuable, you need to get really good at connecting with people, building rapport, asking powerful questions, and helping them frame their problems in a very solid way. And the next buying decision is they buy your company. They want to know, if you get hit by a bus, something happens to you, can your company deliver on the promise that you're making, right? Sometimes people skip this and they go right into the product and the price and try and create urgency. But the first 2 are the most important ones, and you've got to do it in that order. But where do people usually come and talk to you? They come and talk to you about product and price. They want to know, what is it and how much is it? So we get into that double Dutch skipping rope mode and we say, well, this is what we got, blah, blah, blah. And we vomit all of our business crap all over people. And we wonder why people aren't buying. So if you want to sell, questions I was asked is, in a competitive landscape, how do I sell when price is pretty much the only thing you're looking at? You have to ask yourself, are you being valuable enough that price is not the issue? Because you are the product. Right? Everything you do in your business, no matter how big your organization is, people buy from you first. So you have to understand, is what I'm doing and who I'm being valuable enough to my customers? Ask yourself why. Your reason why is that thing that gets you up early in the morning and keeps you up late at night, that drives you forward. It can't just be about making money. It has to be some kind of an impact that you want to make with people. For me, my belief really is creating a movement of people that are having fun, simplifying their sales, growing their business, and getting back to a really genuine place of helping people buy from them. That's my why. And so that's the fundamental driver for everything that I'm doing. So you have to ask yourself, what's your why? I love this picture. I was looking for actually this morning. My number one thing I'm working on this year is how quickly I can be authentic in my presentations, on the phone, with people I meet. And it's something that if you've ever been on a call with somebody and you get into that robotic mode and you say, oh, this is what I have and blah, blah, blah. You get into this like sort of boring conversation. And then all of a sudden, maybe something happens and you go, oh yeah. And you get into this really interesting, like kind of dialogue. That's when your conversation actually starts. Nowhere before that. So you have to decide, am I going to be as authentic, as fast as possible on every phone call and every interaction I have? Because what may seem like repetition for you is always brand new for the person you're talking to. And they want to know instantly, am I connecting with the right person? And I just love this picture of the sloth. The next one, I always ask people, what is selling? And I get tons of answers about all the different theories, but the easiest thing you ever want to remember is selling is just simply the transfer of emotion. It's the transfer of your belief in absolutely what you're doing and what you're offering, that it provides solutions. You need to go into your mental Rolodex and think about all the people that you've possibly helped with your business and your solution, or potentially could help. And you have to find a way to transfer that emotion into somebody else. And you can't do it by just talking features and benefits. So here's a great one I always share with people. It's called rookie magic. And there's science behind this too, studies that I've read, and I've seen it in place. If you've ever been somewhere where you have a brand new sales rep that comes on your team or just starts out of the gates, they come out hot, they're flying. And in about 18 months, their performance starts to drop. And why is that? Well, most people say it's because they get complacent, or they lose their motivation, or the results aren't there, and all this stuff. But the real answer why people struggle at 18 months and why veteran salespeople struggle, I call them tired rep syndrome, is that around this time, we start to become experts. We start to anticipate our customer problems and say silly things like, I know exactly what you need. Hold on, stop saying whatever you're saying, and let me tell you what I think you should do. and instantly you break any kind of bond or any kind of chance of doing business with them. This is why experienced reps struggle at certain points. And if you have somebody that comes in your organization, they start to fail, this is what's going on. They're not connecting with your customers. If you're a doctor and you do that and you become an expert and you start misdiagnosing, what happens to your patients? They die. And in sales, if you misdiagnose your patients, you kill the deal. As simple as that. So don't think of yourself as a doctor who's just trying to figure out and diagnose. You need to go in and really deeply understand the challenges that your customers have. And you need to ask really, really smart questions that help them frame the problem, rather than you telling them what the solution is. And so your ability to ask questions and bubble up what's really going on behind the scenes, the implications and the payoff that they're looking for, is what's going to differentiate you from your competitors. So here's the story. My girlfriend, as I mentioned, for some reason, she likes to send me articles and different resources on how to be a better listener. I think it's mainly just because she wants to help me with my business, but there might be something else behind it. Last year, she sent me a really cool article about what's the one thing that can make a marriage successful. And in that article, it was a story about a man and a woman who were out looking over the patio. And the woman says to the man, "Hey, look at how beautiful those trees are." And I share this story with people everywhere I go. And it's funny that I get different reactions to this. And so she says, "Look at how beautiful those trees are." And the man says what? Now, when I ask this in a workshop, usually people say, "Uh-huh," or "what trees," or "here's how I would fix those trees," or "you're more beautiful than the trees," and all sorts of stuff. And so we look at that, and nobody usually ever gets this question right. And I learned a lot from this article. So here's what happens is the woman has a thought. She looks at these trees, and in looking at those trees, she decides, I want to say something. So she takes the intention of putting her lips together and her tongue and vibrating the air magically. So it enters his ear, vibrates his nervous receptors so that he fires into his brain. So his thought becomes, uh-huh. Now, what happens to the conversation? Man, you kill the conversation by doing that. And in sales, this is what's happening all the time. We're killing these conversations by just saying, uh-huh, or rushing to solve. So when I ask this question and the woman says, "Hey, look at how beautiful those trees are," the answer is, what is it about those trees that you find beautiful? Now, I want you to think about that for a sec. Every time that you're having a conversation with one of your potential clients, and they share with you some kind of a nugget of information, you should find a way to ask a question about that. So if somebody says, I'm just really scared about where the market's going right now, instead of saying, "Don't worry about that, here's how we solve it," you instead say, "What is it about the market that you're finding scary?" Right? Or, "I don't think that timing is right now to make this decision. What is it about right now that's probably not going to be a good fit for you in terms of timing?" Right? That question alone now opens up a new dialogue, and you show that you're actually listening and paying attention. So I'll give you a little bit about a sales history, just so you have a framework. There's been a long, rich history of people doing this in an industry, and it goes back to the beginning of time of people inventing currency. But the professional sales world started really in 1925. And I'm going to show you some of the stuff in one of these later slides. But E.K. Strong was the father of the transactional sale. And he taught these three concepts I'm going to share with you in a little bit. And those three concepts are still being taught today. When I go into organizations, they're still teaching these things, and you're going to know what I'm talking about. Then in the 70s, in the 50s and 60s, they invented all these really cool manipulation tactics. So in the 70s, they invented the professional buyer, simply for the fact to thwart the professional seller. And I've heard stories of buyers that are completely trained, and their whole role is to stop people from selling to the organization. Now, what does that do in the buyer-seller relationship? Man, it's tough. And that's why so many people have this weird feeling about sales, because it feels icky. It feels salesy. We've heard all of this before, right? So that's why in the 80s, I've got a video on spin selling on my site. A guy named Neil Rackham, they did a lot of research on what are the things that are working. So this consultative sales era was sort of birthed, where people got really good at diagnosing, asking questions, and moving people more towards decisions. And they started to review these things. And over the years, another book like Challenger Sale, where they looked at the seller profiles and who was actually doing good work and who wasn't. And they're realizing all these things over the years is that the concept of relationship selling is dead. But it's not so true. In today's market, it used to be, the Mad Men days where you'd wine and dine, you'd take your customers out, you build relationships, and hopefully the business would become as a part of that. But in today's world, you need to offer something like an insight. You need to be able to help people provide answers to their problems, but not more information. We always think that we're trying to give people more information, but what we're trying to do is help them solve problems, because there's no lack of information out there. If you're just giving info, you're overwhelming them. So in today's market, what you need to be is an absolute resource for your customers. You need to be the one person that when they see you come up on their call display, we all do it, they don't push X on the phone. They go, hey, you know what? I'm going to pick up the phone and talk to this person, because every time I do, they help me solve something, whether they buy from you or not. Think about that. In the market today, this is a stat. 60% of the buying process is complete before buyers even call suppliers. Why is that? Well, we just said, because they're more informed than ever. They're making decisions in-house with their teams, and then they're going out and they're looking for a solution to a very specific problem. And so then as sellers, we end up being handcuffed, because what happens is if they do that, we have to wait here to compete with our competitors. We have to be here. We have to kind of typically go on price. And possibly we want to try and help them make a better decision. But at this point, they really just want to solve this problem that they've decided. Whereas right here, we want to educate the market. We want to be in the place where there's the most non-competitive deals, in the place where they're probably maybe not even thinking about the solution. Hope that makes sense for you. Now, think about these numbers. 97% of the time, they're not looking to buy the thing that you have. And I'll show you how those numbers add up. So write these down. And there's different theories around this. I was just reading Chet Holmes' Ultimate Selling Machine. I've heard these numbers for many, many years. And I don't know where they came from, but these totally make sense. 3% of the market is active. They're looking to buy the thing that you have, and they're just trying to figure out what the best version of it is. Do I buy it from you, or do I buy it from somebody else? 7% of the market is open to discussing options around this solution that they're trying to buy. Next 30%, they're aware, or sometimes not even aware they have a problem, but they're open to a discussion, but for something in the future. They'd explore it. The next 30% are unaware that they have a problem. Typically, they think they don't even need what you have. So if you talk to them about what you have, they say, oh, that's not really for me. And then 30% probably don't need what you have. But if you look at this, there's a sweet spot here. 67% of the marketplace is open to be educated. So what you have to do is disrupt their thinking by showing how things can be different, especially for that bulk, which is the 60%. Those are most likely the people that aren't inquiring for what you're offering. Most marketers are marketing to the 3 to 10% at the top, trying to get that low-hanging fruit of people that are seeking. And that's why we're competing on price. If you build market and brand gravity towards yourself in that 60%, that 67%, you create something that your competitors have no access to. So when you're building insights, and I talk a lot about this, you have to understand what's called hypnotic language. And I like these circles the way they're drawn. I like diagrams. I like that stuff. When you look at this, most of the time we end up diving into, let's talk about how I'm going to solve your problem as an individual. But what I want you to think about is how can you frame your language around what's happening in the economy, in society, what's going on. That's why I opened the call with saying, nobody needs more stuff to do. Everybody's busy. You guys will all agree to that. Nobody will dispute that, right? We're overwhelmed, we're overcomplicated, there's too much stuff. But then we start to dig into the industry. What's happening in your customer's industry that you can provide insights on? Here's what we're seeing. Here's the landmines. Here's the roadblocks. And in their organization, can you help them see what potentially is not working and working? Maybe perhaps supply chain ideas that they can share. And then the roles, can you understand the complex dynamics between the people that they have in their teams and how they're all affected, so that as an individual, here's some ways you need to move forward. If you frame your language in that way, they will say yes the whole way, so that by the time you get to their individual problem and you're talking solutions, they're much more willing to listen to what you need to say, right? And now you're able to create collaborative opportunities together because you had a much larger discussion. Most people do this backwards, so remember that. Great sort of research here. They did a review of thousands of buyers, and what they looked for, it was completely different what sellers thought it was. So I thought I'd share this with you guys today. They're looking for sellers to offer them unique, valuable perspectives of the market. What can you tell them that they don't already know, right? Don't go in and tell them what your product or price is. Do you help them navigate alternatives, stuff that maybe they weren't thinking about? Have you thought about this? Or have you seen this cool tool? Even show them some of your competitors so that they're making a complete decision. You want to be part of the collaborative conversation. The next one, do you provide them ongoing advice or consultation in your market? Do you speak? Do you do things where you're seen as a thought leader? Do you help them avoid potential landmines like, be careful there. I want to show you some things that I've seen in the past. Here's this case study of somebody that didn't do it this way, right? Do you educate them on new issues and outcomes? Can you, because your customers are typically trying to solve their problems based on their limited frame of reference, you have done probably hundreds or thousands of implementations of whatever your offer is. So you're going to have a much more broad understanding of how to help them solve those problems. So can you help them see all the potential of making new decisions? Do you make it easy to buy from you, or do you make it complicated? And as you're going along, do you get widespread acceptance across the entire organizations? By having that sort of complex, that hypnotic language, you need to understand all the people that are making influences. It used to be where you just had to get to the decision maker, but right now on average, there's about 6.8 people that are involved in every decision in large organizations. So you need to be aware of that you're not just trying to get to decision makers, because they want to know, does everybody agree on this based on the network theory? So people do buy in stages. I think sometimes we say, well, we look at what's called trailing indicators. How many customers, how much money did I make this month? But we forget that people make decisions in sort of micro steps, and they move along very specifically. And you have to do things at each stage that move them a little bit closer to a decision. Most sellers, most people pitching their idea are trying to hit that home run. They're trying to think in terms of a transactional sale of, I just need you to buy this thing right now. So I spent a lot of time training on this. We build these live and in person with clients, where we look at what's the stage your customer is going, what do you want from them, and then what value do you give? And you need to give like 10 times the amount of value for everything you want. And if you look at this chart, money comes down on the 5th level. So you're trying to get from people 4 steps. So you have to give all that other value before you can even begin to ask for money. And if you're not doing that and you don't understand this, you're probably spinning your wheels trying to say, well, how come my price is not the right price? So let's talk gaining commitment. This is I'm going to get into some sciencey, neuroscience stuff. This is fun for me. When you're doing your stages, each time you want people to move forward, especially in the first conversation, are you even asking them to move forward? Are you just saying, hey, you know what? Let's take this a little bit deeper. Let's sit down and I can evaluate. I'll share with you some insights on what's happening in your market. And by the end of it, we'll decide whether we're a good fit or not. Are you doing that? 100% of the time. I see too many times that salespeople are just not even asking for that commitment. And they wonder why my percentages are so low. So they're asking 75% of the time and maybe getting 50% of those people committing. What if you ask 100% and got 40%? You're still miles ahead. The next one, this is a cool one. Use this concept of concession and favor. If you ask somebody to book an appointment with you, ask them to do something and they say no, I want you to think of that as not like this personal rejection, like you're the worst person in the world, but that you offered them a piece of gum and they just said, I don't want that piece of gum. That's all they're saying. They're just like, I don't feel the value. I don't want to do the next thing. Who cares? Work on your game. If they say no, there's a really powerful thing you can do, which is, say, okay, well, if you don't want to do that, can you do me a favor, right? The number one time to ask for a favor is after somebody says thanks or after somebody says no. It's this power of reciprocity, the reason that we like to do things for other people that have done things for us. So here's an example. In Phoenix, there was a study that I read by a guy named Dr. Robert Cialdini, and they went out and they asked people, how many of you would be willing to take a group of juvenile delinquents to the zoo for the day? And what do you think? How many people do you think agreed? It was 17%. 17% of people said, yeah, I'll do that. It's kind of a weird request. Then they tried with a different group and they asked a different question. They said, how many of you would be willing to sign up as a big brother and big sister for a minimum an hour a week to 3 hours for the next 3 years? And the people there are going, oh man, I don't even know where I'm going to be in a year from now. And so they say, okay, well, that's no problem. Well, if you don't want to do that, will you do us a favor? Why don't you take a group of kids to the zoo? Would you be willing to do that? How many people do you think signed up for that? 50%. So just by changing that conversation, adding this reciprocation, this favor question, they move their closing from 17 to 50%. So what you want to look at is in your stages, do you have multiple commitment objectives you can do that are already pre-planned in your mind? So if somebody says no to what you want, say, no problem. Give them a big out and say, here's what I'd like you to do. Would you do this for me? Most likely they're going to say yes. But if you wait until the next interaction with them and you ask for them to do something, then they're going to treat it as a new request and you go back to stage one. So your favor and your concession question has to be asked in that moment when they tell you no. Hope that makes sense. The next one is, this is a big one. I work with a lot of teams on this and a lot of individuals. Don't prejudge. You've probably got clients that maybe when you first met them, customers when you first met them, that on the surface, they didn't seem like they would have been successful with your product and were your best success stories. Now, when you're talking to people, either on the phone, in person, are you already pre-qualifying them out of your sales process? If you know that some people surprise you as customers, don't prejudge them. Make a note in front of you that sometimes this stuff really does work, and I need to give everybody a chance to be successful as a customer. Let them self-select out of your process. The next one is ensure that they agree on the next step. Too many times I see people say, well, here's what we're going to do, and then do this and do this. And they just basically say what they want the customer to do. And the customer says, no problem. They get off the phone or off the call because they escaped without having to commit. The principle of consistency. Another story I'll share with you, and I actually shared this earlier this week in my blog. There was one of the notorious places is restaurants for having people no-show. And so a restaurateur, I'm trying to remember where it was, but they decided to change the way that they asked people to keep their reservations. They used to say, please let me know if you need to change your reservation. And that way they did it, they were getting about 30% no-shows. There's two words that they added to that statement that dropped those no-shows from 30% to 10%. All they did was change it from please will you let me to will you please let me know if you need to change your reservation. And they made sure that somebody said yes or no. And people always say, yes, I will. And the principle of consistency is if somebody verbally says something or does something, they're more likely to comply with that commitment because they've actively publicly said it. And this happens whether they say yes or whether they say no, which is what we're going to get into shortly here. So remember that. Will you? And then get them to say yes or no, whatever you want people to do. And I've had teams that are going, I had one girl call me today say she's increased her booking rate from 40% to 70%. And the people that are showing up are way higher at about 80%. The major point here to get commitment is you have to be valuable. Whatever you're trying to get somebody to do is you need to make sure that you're being valuable for them, that your solution is compelling. So let's talk a little bit about how people think, right? I like to share this because it makes sense. There's if you've ever heard of priming, priming is a sort of a psychological term for basically whatever you're doing right now, something that happened before has influenced your thinking and behavior in some way. So the concept of money priming is there were some studies that they did where they put people into these research groups, and the one group they subtly hinted at things like money and profit and cash flow, and the other group they didn't. And in that money group they also did like screensavers of money, so really subtle stuff. And then they put them in activities, and one of the activities they had them do was they were going to fill out some surveys in like a classroom type setting. And as they were doing that, somebody was walking around and they dropped some pencils. The people that were primed with money picked up about half as many pencils as the people that weren't primed with money. And the next study they did is they had that group with money go and they asked people to go into a room and take 2 chairs and set it up because they were going to have a conversation with somebody else. And the people that were primed with money on average put those chairs about 118 centimeters apart. That's Canadian. I don't know what that means in the imperial system, but it's 118 centimeters apart. The ones that weren't primed with money were 80 centimeters apart. So the theory behind this is that when we are thinking about money, Subconsciously, we create barriers between ourselves and others, and we're less likely to help. It's what I call sales breath. You can smell it when somebody's trying to sell you. They want something from you. So the opposite of that is to give value first. In your intentions that you set before every meeting, you have to ask yourself, like I showed on that Selling in Stages, what value am I giving? Not what I want from this person, but what can I give them that they go, wow, every time I meet you, you give me a lot of value. The money will come. The clients that I work with that this concept makes sense, the money will come, right? I love this slide. You have to adopt this mindset of, I don't need the business. There is no scarcity of people that want to buy from you, especially if you understand that slide where 67% of the market's probably not even looking at you. There's a ton of people out there that want to buy from you. You have to go find them, and you also have to be willing to walk away from business. So in your brain, there's 3 parts. I like to share this with people too. There's the reptilian brain. This is your oldest brain. This is the part that is responsible for survival, flight or fight, and it's your autonomic nervous system. It's about breathing. It's all that system. It's that thing that when you walk into a room, you know, do I trust this person? Do I not trust this person? Do I feel safe? Do I not feel safe? The next part is your limbic system, and this one became one of our, as we started to evolve, we developed this, and this is responsible for emotions. It's also part of our associative memory, which is why storytelling is so important, to be able to limit the amount of survival instincts that kick in. Then the next one is the neocortex, and the neocortex is our logical, our thinking, our rational brain. And what I see happening all the time is that people go in and they beat their customers over the head with features and benefits and stuff and information. Let me just send you this 50-page white paper on what's happening in the industry. And they go, oh, this makes me feel overwhelmed and stressed. And the reptilian brain says, let's get out of here, right? And we're talking to people on the phone. We say, let me just hold on a sec. Let me tell you 10 more steps. Right? And I'm kind of doing it right now. I'm giving you lots of information. The goal here is to simplify this information and say, what am I going to do right now? What feels good about this? Now, remember we talked about E.K. Strachan, the guy in the 1925? This is what he came up with. Have you ever heard of these? Probing, objections, and closing. This stuff is still being taught today. But let's face it, nobody wants to be probed, nobody wants to be handled, and nobody wants to be closed. And the problem with this is that this was developed for the transactional model to sort of get people to make a decision on the spot. But in today's complex sale, your customers are making decisions in the intervals between them interacting with you. So you need to know how to reduce these challenges. When you get objections, you're too late. Remember that principle of consistency? If somebody vocalizes no to something, you're way less likely to get them to recommit as a yes. So remember this. Your goal is not to handle objections, but to reduce resistance. And I love pictures of animals. You guys probably see that. Resistance comes in 2 forms. The first one is the knee jerk. This is the one, it's called reactance. We're like, don't like that, right? Somebody asks us to do something and we go, oh, don't like it. That doesn't make sense. I'm not doing it, right? Smell this milk. Don't want to smell that milk. Okay. The next one, anticipated future regret. Right, is these 2 things operate in conjunction together. If we think about, remember those circles that I showed you about the hypnotic language? When you start from that place of telling people how to solve problems individually, usually you're going to be met with knee-jerk reactance. And that's where objections surface. When you paint a picture of what's going on and that movie in your customer's mind starts playing, they start to go, if I do this, will I regret it? Or if I don't do this, will I regret it? That's what you need to be painting in the mind of your customers. And that's why framing the problem through questions and connecting is so important. That's why value trumps price every time. In the absence of all other reasons, price is there, but there are tons of other reasons. So they're thinking, do I trust you? Or are they like every other salesperson? So when you're talking to people, think about how you can tell stories, how you can frame more of a movie. People, since the beginning of time, that's how we're wired as humans. We think in stories. We that limbic system, the associative memory, tries to recall. We try and visualize ourselves in situations and how this is going to affect us, right? So what you want to try and do is ask them, can I tell you a story? That's going to reduce that knee-jerk reaction. And it's going to say, yeah, I like a story. Tell me the story. So the story structure, you can study all of this, but I'm going to keep it simple. Stories go in all sorts of structures like this, and you can see them, and you go on TED Talks. There's all sorts of things. There's the hero's journey, all sorts of really fun ways to look at stories. Okay. So what I'll make it simple for you. When you're communicating with people and you want to paraphrase, do it like this. Okay. So let me just make sure I have your story correct. In your business right now, here's the situation. It goes like this. You've done really cool stuff in your market. This is how you guys have grown, and your team's doing this, and this makes sense, blah, blah, blah. But what you've seen is that over the last year, and with technology and with this, and this is what's happened, this is what's happening. So you're seeing increasing challenges. And the more we've talked, you realize that all of this stuff is building on itself. But what we've realized today is that if we can just figure out a way to do this, then we're going to be in a much better place, so that in a year from now, you'll be able to do this. You'll be able to make different decisions, and your business is going to go like this, and you're going to feel effortless, and you're going to be able to have that freedom that you're talking about. Then you ask this power question right here. Have I missed anything? This question allows them, this is the only time in your process that you ever want to hear a no, first of all. And it also allows any of those hidden objections to possibly bubble up in a way that's non-confrontational. This just allows them to make sure that you've clarified the story. It's a really powerful way to do it. And on this call, I think a new friend of mine, his name's Chris out of Florida. We just talked yesterday, and he was asking me about sharing his personal story, his why, with his customers and his marketing. And Chris, absolutely do that, but build it in that way where you talk about what was going on in your life, the challenges that were happening, the realization that you had, and what the world looks like now that you've solved that problem. That why and that story is really, really powerful for your customers. Likewise, you can do a story in that structure talking about your company. Right? Here's how we started. Here's what we realized in the industry. We were challenged with this, but we realized it goes like this, because this is what the market asked for. So now the goal of our business goes like this and goes like that. It's really powerful. Next, talk about previous customers and how you help them, but put it in a way that shows that they're the hero. That's the key. When you're telling stories, it's not about you being the hero solving the problem, but rather your customer solving the problem in the story. They want to put themselves as the hero. Then you can also use this as when you're talking to people as conceptual agreement or paraphrasing. At the end of a conversation, you can use this story structure to say, just so I'm clear, here's what I'm thinking. Even more powerful, before you send them a proposal with price, send them a conceptual agreement, which is essentially a story that says, just so I make sure that we've covered everything, here's the story. Have I missed out anything? Follow that structure, and then they're going to email you back and say, actually, here's what I think, here's what I think. I've probably won 3 clients in the past year that I might not have won if I would have just submitted a proposal with what I thought I heard. Make sense? Also, if you send that story and it's good and they see themselves as the hero, what'll happen? They're probably going to share it with their people in their team. If we're trying to build into that widespread acceptance, they're going to spread it with their team in the organization. So stories create this really cool sales moment where that video in their mind, that movie in their mind, tips the odds in your favor. In your brain, there's 2 systems. And this is always talking about getting into a concept called sales flow. And in a book called Thinking Fast and Slow, they made it easy because he named them systems 1 and 2 instead of some complex system. But system 1 is essentially that unconscious brain that allows you to be in that state of flow. And system 2 is that conscious brain that when you start to think about something, it kind of takes you out of flow, but it engages this new thought. So system 1 is like if you're driving on a highway and you just don't even think about it or don't know how you got somewhere when you're driving. But system 2 is the one that when you're first learning how to drive, you have to remember all this stuff. So what I'm talking about here is that as you go and build these skills, you need to keep yourself in a state of flow, in that state of authenticity, in that state of intention where you're giving value, and slowly over time, learning how to pinpoint emotions, pinpoint new questions, see around the corners, and start to engage that conscious brain. And that's why you'll be able to, remember that movie, The Matrix with Neo, when he started to see the agents as numbers and symbols, that's what you'll be able to be in your sales game, is the one. Because you start to engage in a totally different way. And now all of a sudden, all of that conscious energy becomes unconscious for you as you build. And it becomes really fun then, because now you're having really deep, meaningful conversations. So I always talk, this stuff is very complicated. It's not easy, but it's simple if you start to apply it day after day, okay? Here's another one I'll tell you. Multitasking. Everybody talks about multitasking. I see it everywhere. But multitasking is a myth. This is a stat that I like. Brief mental blocks cause this 40% lost productivity time. We are trying to do way too much stuff. Remember those boxes from the first slide? That's what this is about. So we are trying to juggle all these things. I have all these tabs open, all this stuff. It's like a computer that's running at peak capacity that's just burning itself out. Why is that happening? Well, in your brain, there's two things. You have to shift. Now I'm going to move to this decision. I want to be able to, I want that goal. And then I want this goal. And we go back and forth. So we keep changing how the rules are, right? Then we change those rules, those goals and rules, and we have to change the way our thought process is. So all of these sort of micro stages that happen in our brain is what's causing us to lose all this productivity time. So I always talk about, if you're going to say make sales calls or you're going to do planning, whatever you're going to do, put it into bursts of 30 minutes to 90 minutes where you just absolutely crank it out and focus on one thing at a time. So the goal here is to absolutely simplify what you're doing every single day and find those 1 or 2, 3 things that you can build over time. And like I mentioned in the beginning, repetition is key. Just knowing this stuff doesn't make it happen. Just having a new idea doesn't make it happen. You have to put it into action and have fun with this. When your customers see you having fun, the magic happens. Okay. So now what? Now I want to try something out here. So for me, I'm not really a marketer. I do lots of marketing stuff, and this is my first time using this webinar system and sharing this. And I see a couple times it froze, so I'm learning, right? And I just thought it'd be fun. Try this new tool, interact with people, get out of my comfort zone a bit. And what I was hoping to do through this webinar is to try and make some of this information, some of this consulting that I do with my clients more accessible. That's been one of my goals this year, is to actually find more people out there that I can help. I wanted to meet some cool people and be able to help them solve these problems that everybody's faced with. Right? I also want to build a community where I'm connecting different people like that have these same problems together. So today what I'm offering is a 6-week group coaching program. I thought I'd throw that out there. And what I want to do is, through that program, is to help you dial in your playbook. I want you to dial in how to actually build these conversations in a very simple way so you can be more effective and simplify your day-to-day. So that's what I want to do. Now, the only catch is that if you sign up for this program, I'm going to do a screening call to make sure pretty much that you're cool people, right? I want to know that you have the right mindset to do this with me. And so if you're not sure about this, just hold on, right? Because this, for me, it's not about the money. I'm just trying something new, and I want to help more people do this year. So if you're stuck and you think that you want an edge and you think that we're going to be a fit, click the button. Right? I want you to click that button and say, you know what? This sounds pretty cool. I'm doing it at a crazy price. Usually this is something that I charge a lot more for clients, but I'm trying to make it accessible. I'm trying to find some new people doing cool stuff. Okay. So I want you to check that out. Now I'll go through quickly what's involved in this program. I've mapped this out. Essentially what I'm going to do for the 6 weeks is help you set those goals and strategy. I'll give you some worksheets that you can go through to set that strategy long-term so you can build these habits, not just now, but into the future. Okay. I'm going to show you how to actually build those questions and craft those for your business specifically. Then we're going to get into actually how to build those insights, how to build this storytelling, how to build these repeatable systems, what your stages are really going to look like, give you the tools to build that, and then I'll help you with some live playbook building in the same time. Okay. So for me, that's really important, is I want to help more and more people do this in their business. And I'm trying this out for the first time. So you get to be part of a pilot program, and I don't really know if I'm going to do this again, just seeing how it works. Okay. I thought I'd throw this up just so you have an idea of what other people say. You know, I do all this marketing research and they say, put some social proof. Hopefully, but you've got enough value from this that it makes sense. But these are some of the things people are saying. Is it really comes down to, after doing some of this work, I want to help people feel a lot more effortless. Right? My mission is to build a system, build a movement of people who I'm going to call sales heroes that are doing really cool work and helping their customers right from the start. So this is the start of this movement. I want to start building this community. I'd love for you to be a part of that. So if you've had value from this, click on that link. And like I mentioned, I'll be sending information out so that we can do that screening call, make sure that we're a good fit. And if you have questions, you can contact me, get a hold of me through my websites. But I wanted to thank you for attending the webinar today, letting me share this information with you. It's really cool to connect with you guys, and definitely reach out to me and let me know how I can help.